You can split an atom, and in 1945 we proved it over Hiroshima when a sphere of uranium smaller than a grapefruit released the energy of 15,000 tons of TNT. 66 million degrees burned at the core of that explosion, and 80,000 human beings vanished in a fraction of a second. You learned this somewhere, maybe in school or from a documentary, or maybe from the cultural memory of a mushroom cloud rising over a Japanese city at the end of the Second World War. What you probably never learned was how it actually works, how to describe what happens in the heart of a nuclear reactor, or why the same process that lights a city can incinerate one. Most people cannot explain the difference between fission and fusion, and that difference matters for the future of our species. The thing that should keep you awake at night is that this ignorance changes nothing about the technology itself. Bombs exist whether you understand them or not. Reactors hum along regardless of your comprehension. And roughly 13,000 nuclear warheads sit in silos and submarines around the world right now. The technologies that could elevate humanity to the stars or return us to the Stone Age operate independently of your awareness. And that creates the great paradox of our time. We have become the most powerful species this planet has ever produced. We achieved this power through science, and almost none of us understand the science that grants us this power. We have arranged a global civilization in which the most important elements depend on science and technology, everything from transportation to communications to energy to agriculture to medicine to national defense. We have also arranged things so that almost no one understands science and technology, which creates a prescription for disaster. We might get away with it for a while, but sooner or later, this combustible mixture of ignorance and power is going to blow up in our faces. Understanding the relationship between power and knowledge is not an intellectual exercise. It is a matter of survival. Consider the decisions you make every day, starting with something as simple as flipping a switch. Light floods the room from electricity generated by nuclear fission or by the combustion of ancient plants compressed into coal over 300 million years. You turn a key and controlled explosions propel you forward at 60 miles per hour, burning refined petroleum in a choreography of pistons and valves. A single aspirin contains a compound derived from willow bark, synthesized through organic chemistry most physicians themselves could not replicate. When you tap a screen, your voice travels through the air, bounces off satellites orbiting at 22,000 miles altitude, and reaches someone on the other side of the planet in less than a second. Every single one of these actions would have been considered magic by our ancestors. And yet we perform them casually, thoughtlessly, without any comprehension of the principles that make them possible. You do not need to understand internal combustion to drive a car, and you do not need to know organic chemistry to take aspirin. The technology works regardless of what you know about it. But here's the thing. There is a real difference between using a tool and understanding it. When you don't understand something, you cannot evaluate it, you cannot improve it, you cannot recognize when it's being misused, and most dangerously, you cannot anticipate its consequences. A parallel from economics shows this pattern clearly. In 2008, the global financial system nearly collapsed because instruments called collateralized debt obligations had become so complex that even the regulators tasked with overseeing them could not comprehend their risks. The people trading trillions of dollars in derivatives often understood only their small piece of the puzzle, and the system had accumulated power far beyond anyone's understanding. When it broke, it nearly took civilization with it. This same pattern of power outstripping comprehension appears again and again, and it may be the defining vulnerability of complex societies. 23 centuries ago, on the shores of the Mediterranean, there existed the greatest city the Western world had ever seen. Alexandria was a place where Greeks, Egyptians, Arabs, Syrians, Hebrews, Persians, Nubians, Phoenicians, Italians, Gauls, and Iberians exchanged merchandise and ideas. It was here that the word cosmopolitan realized its true meaning, citizen not just of a nation, but of the cosmos. At the heart of this city stood a building that changed the world. The great library of Alexandria was not merely a repository of books. It was a research institute, a university, a place where the best minds of antiquity came to push the boundaries of human knowledge. 2,000 years ago, in those marble halls, the foundations were laid for the systematic study of mathematics, physics, biology, astronomy, literature, geography, and medicine. We build on those foundations still. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the earth using nothing more than the length of shadows and the distance between two Egyptian cities, and he was correct to within about 2%. Aristarchus of Samos proposed that the earth orbits the sun 17 centuries before Copernicus rediscovered the idea. Euclid codified geometry into a system so elegant that Abraham Lincoln studied it to sharpen his logical thinking. Archimedes discovered the principles of buoyancy and a lever, reportedly boasting that with a lever long enough he could move the earth itself. 850 stars found their positions mapped in the first comprehensive star catalog created by Hipparchus. And then there was Hypatia, mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, the last great mind of the library. In an age when women had few options and were treated as property, she moved freely through traditional male domains, teaching students, corresponding with scholars, making original contributions to mathematics. By all accounts, she was brilliant. In the year 415, a mob dragged her from her carriage and murdered her, scraping the flesh from her bones with oyster shells and roof tiles. Something essential was extinguished with her death. But something had gone wrong long before that murder. Slowly, over centuries, the culture that had nurtured this explosion of knowledge began to change. Slavery had sapped classical civilization of its vitality because there was no reason to develop labor-saving technologies when you have slaves to do the work. The mysteries of nature were increasingly seen as the province of priests rather than scholars. Critical thinking was discouraged, and obedience was prized. The scholars of the library never seriously challenged the political and economic injustices of their society, and they never applied their magnificent tools of skeptical inquiry to the institutions that governed them. The glory of the Alexandrian Library is now a dim memory, its scrolls scattered and burned, its scholars silenced. It was as if the entire civilization had undergone some self-inflicted brain surgery, and most of its memories, discoveries, ideas, and passions were extinguished irrevocably. Of the 123 plays of Sophocles held in the library, only 7 survive. That loss is equivalent to a world where the only surviving works of Shakespeare were Coriolanus and A Winter's Tale, where we had heard he had written other plays called Hamlet, Macbeth, Julius Caesar, King Lear, and Romeo and Juliet. But they were lost to us forever. Their poetry and insights vanished from the human inheritance. This is what happens when a civilization loses its commitment to knowledge, when power exists without understanding. The darkness returns, the candle flame gutters, and the demons begin to stir. You might think we are different because we have electric lights instead of candles, computers instead of scrolls. We have sent spacecraft to the outer planets and split the atom and mapped the human genome. The Voyager spacecraft, launched in 1977, have traveled beyond the edge of our solar system, carrying golden records encoded with the sounds and images of Earth. Those records are messages in bottles cast into the cosmic ocean, and you might assume that makes us immune to regression. But consider how many of the technologies that sustain your life you could explain to a curious child, or how many you could build from scratch if civilization collapsed tomorrow. Consider how many of the policy decisions that shape your world you can evaluate with any confidence. Decisions about genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, nuclear proliferation, and climate change. Today's equivalent of the library isn't a marble building. It's the interconnected web of servers and databases and undersea cables that carry 97% of intercontinental data. This fragile infrastructure of knowledge could be disrupted by a solar flare, a cyber attack, or the slow erosion of the institutions that maintain it. The Internet Archive, humanity's attempt to preserve the digital record, currently fights for its existence in courts. We are not as secure as we imagine. The technological perils that science serves up, its implicit challenge to received wisdom, and its perceived difficulty give many people reasons to mistrust and avoid it. We have witnessed something extraordinary and alarming in recent decades, a growing fraction of the most educated and privileged members of our society who are functionally illiterate in science. They can quote poetry and debate philosophy, but they cannot tell you why the sky is blue, or what DNA does, or how a vaccine works. Fewer than 3% of members in the United States Congress have backgrounds in science or engineering. And these are the people who vote on artificial intelligence, regulation, pandemic response, climate policy, and nuclear treaties. The people making the most consequential decisions often understand them no better than medieval kings understood the physics of their catapults. I have a foreboding about the future where awesome technological powers concentrate in the hands of a very few, while no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues. I see a time when people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when our critical faculties decline until we can no longer distinguish between what feels good and what's true, and we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. When I first voiced these concerns, some thought them alarmist. But look around at what has happened since. The dumbing down of public discourse. The 30-second sound bites reduced to 10 seconds, then to slogans, then to tribal signals. The celebration of ignorance as a virtue, the mockery of expertise as elitism, the rise of conspiracy theories that require rejecting basic physics, basic biology, basic arithmetic. We're watching this foreboding unfold in real time. None of this is inevitable. but preventing it requires effort and understanding. The same technologies can liberate or enslave us depending on how wisely we use them. Consider nuclear physics, where the same science that created weapons capable of ending civilization also saves over 40,000 cancer patients annually through nuclear medicine. Radioactive isotopes target tumors with precision impossible through any other means, using the same atoms, the same physics, the same equations. Different understanding leads to different outcomes. During the Cold War, I worked with colleagues to model what would happen if nuclear weapons were actually used in large numbers. We discovered something the military planners had missed, a phenomenon we called nuclear winter. The soot from burning cities would block sunlight and collapse agriculture worldwide, which meant even the winner of a nuclear war would face mass starvation. This wasn't obvious because it required understanding atmospheric physics, not just weapons physics. Our findings contributed to arms reduction treaties that removed tens of thousands of warheads from active deployment. Understanding mattered, and it may have helped prevent the extinction of our species. The sword of science is double-edged, and its awesome power forces a new responsibility on all of us, including politicians and ordinary citizens. We need more attention to the long-term consequences of technology, a global and transgenerational perspective, an incentive to avoid easy answers and selfish choices. Consider the technologies reshaping our world right now. We are building artificial intelligence systems whose decision-making processes are opaque even to their creators, neural networks with billions of parameters that no human can fully trace. We are editing the genetic code of human embryos and making changes that will be inherited by all future generations. We are altering the climate of an entire planet in an experiment with no control group and no way to undo. We are accumulating power without wisdom, capability without comprehension. The average citizen remaining ignorant about global warming, ozone depletion, air pollution, toxic and radioactive wastes, acid rain, topsoil erosion, tropical deforestation, and exponential population growth is both perilous and foolhardy. Jobs and wages depend on science and technology, and if our nations cannot manufacture products people want to buy at high quality and low price, industries will continue to drift away, taking prosperity and hope with them. But here's the thing that fills me with hope, even as I worry about our future. Science works, and it may be the most successful tool our species has ever developed for understanding reality. Unlike political ideologies, unlike religious revelations, unlike the pronouncements of authorities, science has error-correcting mechanisms built into its very structure. Scientists argue, they test each other's claims, they replicate experiments, and they change their minds when the evidence demands it. Think of how many religions attempt to validate themselves with prophecy, and how many people rely on these prophecies to support their beliefs, even when they are vague and unfulfilled. No religion on the planet has ever achieved the prophetic accuracy and reliability of science. If you want to know when the next eclipse of the sun will be, you might try magicians or mystics, but you'll do much better with scientists. Science delivers predictions that come true, not vaguely, not sometimes, but precisely, reliably, over and over again. The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. Information distilled over 4 billion years of biological evolution. Molecules know how to build cathedrals of flesh and bone, how to paint with the colors of a sunset, how to compose symphonies from the vibrations of air. All of this is encoded in spiraling ladders of DNA, copied and refined across countless generations. The same genetic code shared by bacteria and redwoods and blue whales and you. When you understand this, really understand it, the world becomes more wondrous, not less. And here is the most astonishing thing of all, the thing that should fill you with wonder every time you contemplate it. We understand where we came from, and we know our cosmic address. We have traced our ancestry back not just through the generations of our human forebears, but through the entire history of life on Earth, back through billions of years to the first self-replicating molecules in ancient seas, and before that to the formation of our planet from interstellar dust, and before that to the birth and death of ancient stars. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff, and this is not a metaphor. This is not poetry, though it is poetic. This is literal scientific fact. The calcium in your bones came from a star that exploded before our solar system formed somewhere between 5 and 6 billion years ago. That star knew nothing of you because it was a thermonuclear furnace, fusing hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into heavier elements, until it collapsed and scattered its guts across light years of space. Those atoms now constitute your body, your brain, your thoughts, and through your consciousness, that ancient star's atoms contemplate their own origin. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. For billions of years, matter was unconscious. Atoms combined and separated. Stars ignited and died. Galaxies wheeled through the void, but there was no awareness, no comprehension, no wonder. On at least one small world, something remarkable happened when matter organized itself into configurations so complex that it became conscious and began to ask where we are, what we are made of, how we got here. You are the universe made conscious, the cosmos looking back at itself in astonishment. Every question you ask, every wonder you feel, is the universe wondering about itself. This capacity for self-awareness, for curiosity, for understanding is the most precious thing we know of in all the vastness of space and time. This is why the gap between power and understanding matters, because we are the custodians of something rare and valuable that may be unique in all the galaxy. We are the local representatives of a cosmos grown to self-awareness. We have begun to contemplate our origins. We have begun to understand our past, and we have begun to take responsibility for our future. When the Voyager 1 spacecraft reached the edge of our solar system, I asked NASA to turn its camera around and photograph Earth from nearly 4 billion miles away. In that image, Earth appears as a tiny point of light, a pale blue pixel against the vastness of space. That's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. No hint exists that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life, and there is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. Understanding matters not because knowledge is intrinsically valuable, though it is, and not because science is interesting, though it is. Understanding matters because understanding is survival, because the same technologies that can carry us to the stars can also extinguish us, because we are the only species on this planet that can foresee its own extinction and the only one that can prevent it. We have been given a gift beyond measure, the capacity to comprehend the universe that created us. We have also been given unprecedented power to shape that universe or to destroy our place within it. The question confronting our generation is whether we will be wise enough to match our power with our understanding. The candle flame gutters and its little pool of light trembles as darkness gathers. But the candle still burns, and we are the ones who tend it. Science is not perfect, and it has been misused, but it is the best tool we have, self-correcting, ever-changing, applicable to everything. With this tool, we vanquish the impossible. We have begun to unravel the secrets of matter and energy, of space and time, of life and consciousness itself. We will continue to develop powerful new technologies that much is certain, and the real question is whether we will develop the wisdom to use them well. It is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring. Understanding brings responsibility. Knowledge demands action, and willful ignorance in an age of transformative power is a luxury we can no longer afford. We are the legacy of 15 billion years of cosmic evolution, and we have a choice. We can enhance life and come to know the universe that made us, or we can squander our 15 billion year heritage in meaningless self-destruction. What happens in the first second of the next cosmic year depends on what we do here and now with our intelligence and our knowledge of the cosmos. That is what the relationship between power and understanding really is. Not an academic question, not a philosophical curiosity, a test. The most important test our species has ever faced, and we are taking it right now. The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. The question is whether we will live up to that inheritance, whether we will be worthy of the stars that made us.